Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Alicia Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest.
Fred Armisen.
Prince Paul.
Javier Munoz. Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. It's Josh Modell. On this week's episode, we've got the leader of a killer Chicago band and the co-director of one of the biggest movie franchises in history in a fantastic conversation. It's Alicia Gaines of Ganser and Lilly Wachowski, best known for The Matrix. Now, The Matrix you surely know, but Ganser perhaps you don't. They're a Chicago band that's been around for the last decade or so, but really seemed to snap into focus about 5 years ago with a startling slew of post-punk and art rock sounds that snarl like some of my favorite elder statesmen. Gang of Four, Susie, but updated. Their third and latest album, Animal Hospital, was produced by Angus Andrew of Liars, which makes sense. Oh, and they're fierce live. I saw them last year opening for McCluskey and was blown away. Check out a bit of Stripe from Animal Hospital right here. Lilly Wachowski cut a winding path through Hollywood. Along with her sister Lana, she made the 1996 thriller Bound, it comes up in this conversation, but took the film world by surprise with 1999's The Matrix and, of course, its sequels. The Wachowskis, as they're known professionally, took their films to weirder places after that rather than trying to go mainstream with the unfairly maligned Speed Racer, an anti-capitalist blockbuster, and Cloud Atlas, a strange, moving epic. Both Wachowskis also came out as trans in the years after The Matrix, and Lilly, as you'll hear, has a serious interest in getting that aspect of her life onto the silver screen. In this deep and friendly chat, Lilly and Alicia talk about their shared experience at Chicago's School of the Art Institute, aka SAIC, as well as Animal Hospital, using original music versus well-known pop songs in movies, finding yourself through art, a painting of a suicidal duck, and Lilly's next project, which is, quote, wall-to-wall trans people and trans rage. I hope she can get it made. Enjoy.
Well, hey there, Lilly. How goes?
Oh my God.
It's a loaded question these days, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm hanging in there. How you holding up?
I'm doing okay. I feel like my brain feels like it has a million tabs open at the moment. It's so strange to try to make anything at all with everything that's currently going on. It's very strange to try to make art in times like this, and I just find myself ping-ponging between the desire to make more things, but also I'd want to be on the road, but also you want to be tapped in with what's going on. So it's very much just trying to embrace whatever I'm doing that particular day and trying not to overthink it.
Yeah, totally.
2 weeks today, the record comes out. So it's been a long time coming. You know, it's been 5 years of work. And so I think at this point, my head's just spinning a little bit, admittedly, but I've kind of tried to put myself in the place of like, you know, this is the part where you go show it to the world. And so right now I actually have all these sketches and demos and voice notes of things that I want to do, but I'm trying to hold off so that I'm excited when it's time to kind of go dive back in and get creative again.
5 years, that's a lot of weight behind a project. But in some ways it's cool to me because that's like, you know, that's like how you make film. You put in all this prep. I mean, starting from the writing, and it takes a long, long time, but it feels like when you're about to cross that threshold of, okay, it's completed, that there is all of this stuff that you've poured into it. That's like it's like a huge, significant foundation for the piece of work you're doing. And so it always gives me a sense of like mooring and centering for myself when I start to get worried about, you know, letting my baby go off into the world.
That's really how it feels. It feels like we're about to let it have a life of its own in a way. Like we've put so many different thoughts and so many hours and so much time and notes, and there's so much that was there that was then taken away, you know, like little keystones that you take away and then just go, I think it's going to stand up on its own without it. When you get to this point in the process with a film, how do you typically, kind of ride that from like a personal standpoint? Do you have like, okay, now I'm in this mode, I'm in edit mode. Okay, now I'm in this mode. Or does it all kind of live all at the same time for you all the time?
Well, all the processes are different. As I've gotten older, I've tried to reorient the way I experience making a movie to the extent that I am trying to be as present as possible in the making, right? It's like I think like as artists, because we are programmed to, you got to be successful. You got to make money. You got to make that money. So we put this emphasis on after the art making is done and it's out in the marketplace. And it's like, oh, did it make money? Oh no, it's a bomb. I just bombed, And so I think that's a poisonous way to think about your art making. And it's definitely something that I was victim to earlier in my filmmaking career with my sister. And so now I try to reorient into like the experience itself. Like the making is the thing. So I have to be as present as possible. And then you get to this in the chaos of the actual filmmaking part. And then you get to enjoy all of those little pieces of the mosaic when you're sitting in the editing room, and you get to reminisce over those moments and like make them as good as, like, find all the gems and make them all as sparkling as you can when you're putting it together. And then I let go. So you have this kind of bookend process that is like writing and editing they're very similar because you start with this idea and you're like creating all these like little pieces, literally like words put next to each other, and like you're creating the outline of the mosaic. You get all the pieces and then you bring them together. And so you're always writing from the writing process to the editing process. And then it becomes done. And you have to like, okay, now I'm going to go do something else.
Yes, absolutely. Oh gosh, there's so much in what you just said there. Yeah, I think I very much relate to the fact that once you do something a couple of times, you're able to sit in the moment a little bit more and actually even maybe enjoy yourself? Question mark.
Yeah.
I really picked up a lot of tips from our drummer, Brian, because he treats playing the drums like a sport. It's much more of a physical instrument than everyone else. And so we had done so much preparation to go into the recording studio that I knew that was the playground. That's honestly one of my favorite things, is to be doing production and being in the studio and putting down sound. We were in there for 17 days earlier this year, putting this record together. And every day we got up, we made sure that we got enough sleep, all the things that like maybe if you let your like anxiety spiral out that maybe you're not doing, so that you showed up every day, did the 10, 11-hour day, went home. You didn't go out, you go to sleep, get that good sleep again. Because that's really like, I was like, if we can make it through this, I think everything that we've built so far is good. And I think the part that I love, maybe you feel similarly, is when you're a planner, when you try to put together projects in a way that feels very intentional, when there is a surprise, especially when it's by a collaborator that's not yourself, and that gets folded in and it changes it, those moments that are so not of my own control, those are some of my favorites.
Yeah. I mean, that's why you make communal art, so that you can experience those things, so that you can like come together with other artists and like do stuff together. You can always like go write something or go paint something, or, there's plenty of ways to just express yourself and connect to yourself. But the beauty of filmmaking, and I can see that for music making as well. It's you want that community. It's integral to it.
Absolutely. We were all giddy like children because this is I think a newer piece of equipment that our engineer had purchased. If you can picture a mannequin head, or like what is approximately a human head, with microphones that were in the ears, and it takes sonic recording. And I guess they use it a lot now for video games, but also for film, to capture things in a 3D space. And so when we were doing gang vocals and all shouting, we all went around this microphone and we put on our headphones, and you could really hear it in real space. And that was something that, when I'm just demoing in this office that you see me here now, that's something that I could have never even envisioned happening. And we just had so much fun. And I think if I had let my anxiety get the best of me, I wouldn't have been able to embrace that moment and kind of really just be present there on that day, doing that with those people. But it's funny because all the music's about anxiety. So,
Yeah, that's cool.
It's about getting a grip on it, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
But I know that we both paint as well. What was the order for you? Was it filmmaking and then painting, or were you always painting and then filmmaking came around?
It's all jumbled for me. I mean, definitely filmmaking comes at a specific time in my life, but mom was a painter. She put all the kids in art classes as we were growing up. And I was always like drawing comics.
Isn't that such a gift? Childhood art classes.
It is. And because you're doing it in like community, right? You've got your little sketch pad, we would take turns being like, life models for each other as kids. And so I think like that part of it like hung around. And then I got into high school. In high school, I went to Whitney Young here in Chicago, and they had a pretty good art program there. And so I ended up taking art. I was doing two kinds of things where I was taking theater. I was in the theater program all 4 years, but I was also like taking these art classes. And I had this one art class called commercial art, which was it was a double period. So I would just like make art for, almost 2 hours out of the school day. And that hung around for me. And so went away and went to school for a couple of years, dropped out. In school, I was just concentrating on filmmaking and writing, and like took comedy classes and stuff like that. And came out of there and like became a carpenter. And while I was a carpenter, me and Lana started like trying to pick up comic book writing as like a serious vocation. And so we were into independent stuff at the time, like Julie Doucette and Charles Burns and
Charles Burns.
Yeah, wonderful. And Dan Close.
My copy of Ghost World is like right over here.
Nice. So we were like, oh, well, just make our own independent comic. And so we would do that for a little while, and then we got plugged into some Marvel stuff, like fringe Marvel comics. And we started making money doing that. And then we veered into filmmaking. And so for painting, I had an acuity for the materials because I was painting houses and stuff. And so you get like a feel of the paint and like, what is the paint doing? If it's too thick, if it's too thin, if it's drying too fast, if it's oil, if it's latex. And so all of that experience was like good because it informed me. I was like able to do stuff with a paintbrush that, you just need time with material, I think. And so it came a little quicker for me when I got back into it after I had kind of walked away from the movie business.
That would be really freeing, just to have yourself and the paints to kind of relate to each other and even, pursue it in a way that perhaps is a little bit more solo. There's a little part of me that's a little jealous whenever, I hear about folks being able to create things with siblings. I don't have any myself. So drawing for me was always a huge escape. It was always me locked away in my bedroom with like, some kind of a fantasy novel, my Walkman with like Bjork and like, different late 90s stuff happening in my sketchbook, but it was so personal and it was so in my head. I initially thought maybe I would be an animator. And then I was like, maybe comics. I had interviewed with Dark Horse because they were based out of by where I was from. But I think I didn't quite understand the collaborative nature of everything. So it felt like a lot of pressure. I grew up doing really tight oil paintings, kind of taught very traditionally, and also playing clarinet in like a concert band quartet state competition kind of environment. So it was all very traditional in that way, which I would not trade for the world because there are just core skills that you build up that I think, especially when you learn them when you're young, like that's why I was saying and echoing, your experience of art classes when you're young, because I think there's certain things that once you put it into your eyes, you could unfortunately never unsee it and things just have to be correct. But there is a bit of unlearning that has to happen then afterwards. And so for me, that was borrowing a bass guitar and not learning any of the notes and just going by ear because I had already trained my ear. But still, if you were to hand me my bass guitar and go, where's this note? I couldn't really tell you, but I could find, I'll figure it out. But I think that sometimes you have to trick your own mind, right? Especially like when you're going from medium to medium and different ways of working. Do you find that when you're painting, do you find that you plan as much as you do as a director or as a producer, or is it something where you let your mind kind of open up and maybe drift a little bit more?
I feel like the paintings that I like
I see the one behind you. It looks...
Yes. Yes, there's I'll bring it over.
Okay. Lily is grabbing a painting from her office. Oh, I love that. I love that. Should we describe that oil or is it acrylic? It's a rubber ducky.
Yes.
On a red liquid filled.
Yes, a red liquid filled. Well, this is it's a bathtub.
Yes.
So there's some suicidal ideation happening in here.
Yes.
My professor was like, Lily, are you okay? Is everything okay? I was like, no, it's not okay. But,
I wish everyone could see this painting. It's so dark, but it's so funny.
I think that this was like in a materials class. So this is paint that we got to make. We made the paint. It's made out of egg.
Oh, it's like a tempera. I could see how that could be very good for blood because it's a protein,
Yes.
It's a very one-to-one.
Yeah. So this is like a painting that I had planned. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of want to do this. And, I took a couple of pictures of myself in the tub and my foot sticking up. And I like to paint ducks. They're sort of my self-portraiture. Right.
Gotcha.
This is how I see myself in the world of like fire and blood and skies of darkness. And so typically I will do a sketch or I'll, like just ideate on a page. When I do that, I feel like there is a level of, I feel like the painting gets a little better looking because it feels like there's something behind it than me just goofing around.
It's interesting to see what your mind drifts towards when there's only yourself, canvas, and paint. I find that when I'm making music videos or ideating a record cover or different ways in which I have done visual work in the past, I would always find myself grounded towards, I think, something for me, the only child, grew up, divorce a lot, and in a very white area of the country. I felt very much like an outside observer that was observing everyone else and feeling very outside of that. So I think I became very aware of the signs and signifiers that would make me feel different to different people. My name's Alicia, but it's spelled like Alicia. So I will respond to either. But sometimes people think I'm Dominican. When I was a kid, I had like short curly hair, so I got called a boy a lot. People didn't think that I was my parents' kid because we didn't look alike. A lot of those kinds of things. So when I got to college, a lot of my paintings were around basically the same person, but putting them in different uniforms and kind of switching that out and kind of going, almost like a paper doll, and kind of seeing like how what you put on yourself, or what you kind of surround yourself in, and how you project yourself out into the world. But I think like growing up like that, I think I didn't realize that there were things that I could even do. I loved music as a kid. I had a big CD collection. I liked weird shit. But the idea of being in a band was just like not something that had ever come to mind for me. Like I don't know if it's because there's not a lot of people that look like me in bands. Maybe that was the case. Maybe it was because like, I went to high school like in the early 2000s. So maybe it was because the music scene at that time, it was very much boys making very angry music, especially in rock.
Yeah.
Maybe I just didn't see myself in that. But it really took, the fellow co-founder of the band, Nadia, her saying, "Do you want to make a band?" for me to like have a light bulb go off in my head and go, I guess I could do that. And actually, I'm a graphic designer. I bet I could make the artwork for it. And you know what? I direct food photography. You know what? I bet you I could direct video. And it really just kind of opened everything up, and it all happened very quickly because I had all this background in, music training and whatnot. But I'm wondering, as you've kind of moved through space and time, has anybody ever presented something to you where it opened a door similarly, or maybe you opened one for yourself where it was something that you thought maybe that you'd never do before or could do before, and then suddenly you were?
Yeah, I mean, I've got my I've got my transsexual menace T-shirt on here. Everybody, what you're saying really hits home for a lot of who how I grew up. It was I think like art is this amazing tool for you to be able to exercise parts of your brain that help you expand the universe for yourself and how you see yourself in the universe. And so, being a closeted trans woman, growing up at a time when, there are no words, that all the words that we use to describe ourselves, not trans people, they might have existed, but they were not readily accessible. Like it took me many years to start to be able to take those words and apply them to myself. And maybe that's partially, my own my own lack of imagination, or maybe I was busy expanding that muscle to the point where it felt like I could imagine anything.
Yeah.
To allow myself to be able to go, you know what, I'm trans too, just like my sister, and everybody just take it easy.
Sometimes you have to model it outside of yourself in a piece of artwork to make it real.
Yeah.
And then it can kind of come back inside. That really hits home.
Yeah. Yeah, I love all this stuff that you're talking about, though, about how interdisciplinary your practice is, and like how all of those things can inform each other, especially when you're making a band. And talk a little bit more about that. I'm curious about your time in school at SAIC, because we share that in common, because I went back to school in my 40s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think we might have even had some same professors at some point.
Yeah, I went a little bit before you did for undergrad. It was one of the silliest things I've ever done. That is one of the best things that I think could have happened, which was that there aren't really like that kind of art school. Like I applied to things basically all East. I did look at CalArts, but like there really isn't anything in Oregon and Washington that's like of that ilk. So I was looking at SVA and Pratt and RISD and SCAD and all those schools. And, my family, I came from, a good background, but like, they're not going to fly around to 7 different schools. So we did portfolio reviews in Seattle, but like, I didn't actually get to go visit any of these schools. And so when I got accepted to SAAC and I had scholarship for my portfolio, it was of course, it was like, well, this is where I'm going. I had never been to Chicago before in my life. We landed in August of 2006, and it was so humid and so hot in a way that I had never experienced before in my life as a Pacific Northwesterner, that it was a shock. I thought that I had made a mistake. And
Yeah.
I suddenly found myself surrounded by basically the one other weirdo at every other high school around the country and internationally. And so there was a lot of, you can imagine, like, especially as an 18-year-old, a lot of feeling that out, just in terms of, I think some people came in having they knew themselves as the best. And then suddenly you're middling. And like, what does that mean? There's a huge dropout rate, which I think is pretty known for SASC for incoming students. But I think it's because when you're the one kid that draws in your high school, or a couple of kids that draw in the high school, maybe you had an AP art class or a commercial art class, but that's really the extent of it. You're not really tested. Your metal's not really tested in the same way as like you're good at science and math or you're not. And you know it by the time you go to college. I think there's a lot of kids that go to art school that like art, but whether they're cut out for it, especially post school and going into making art for a living, it's a different beast. So I think really just finding my tribe was like the first thing that really stuck. But from there, I took a lot of oil painting classes, and I also took a lot of screen print classes, and then I also took visual communication. So between all that and like some film classes, all that, I just got really into semiotics and all that, which went into the design work, and then also had my visual work. The problem coming out of that is that you become a junior designer at an agency, pushing pixels, doing the things, using your skills. But the last thing that I wanted to do when I came home was paint, because I had used up all of those skill points, not to use like a video game terminology, but I felt like I had used up all those skills. I felt depleted at the end of the day. So when music came along, it was a real boon because I was able to shift gears and do something different. But SAIC was a wonderful experience. I wouldn't trade it for the world. There are things that I would wish that I could go back to. If I could go live in that screen print studio for a weekend and use those facilities, like for a weekend with no interruption, I would do it in a heartbeat.
I mean, as somebody who dropped out and then went back to school, if you have the means to go back to school for anything, I think like people should do that. I wasn't as present as you in school, and I had stuff going on in my head, and so I was just like trying to figure out how to not be such a weirdo and introvert and try to physically interact with human beings. And, I was successful in the way that as much as you can be as a closeted trans person. I'm wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. So even though I'm like having these interactions, there is a level of them that is like not genuine. And so like that is something that I felt until I came out of the closet, basically. And so I have this sense of my time in college or university that I was just not there. So being able to go back to school and like, oh yeah, this is kind of cool, and like get to have all this experience, albeit a film background, to go back into school and like learn how to talk about art, learn how to talk about my own art, learn how to talk about other people's art, which is a thing that I didn't have. I could, very angstily kind of like let stuff come out, but I didn't want to talk about my art. because there was this facade in front of it. And while I was working on like a lot of like heavy stuff in it, I couldn't actually talk about, idea like what the overarching sense of like liberation. Why am I why am I
that's a huge theme in your work for sure.
Why am I writing about liberation? It's like, well, yeah, of course you are.
Well, so you're making it outside of yourself to make it real for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. There's like this magic trick where you're creating this rope out of thin air and you're like pulling yourself along.
That makes so much sense. I feel like I dissociated through most of college. I think I just always kind of felt like a outsider. I'm usually pretty rare for whatever spaces that I'm in, and that included SAIC. So, I think there's this perception of that when people think of the thing that they do, they don't think of someone like you. And then when you are doing it, sometimes the scrutiny or sometimes the attention is so focused on you because they've never seen someone like you do it before. Like I had that experience a lot in design agencies. I felt like people were watching me like I was a dog playing poker a lot of the time. So it really did take a long time for me to get to a point where I could feel comfortable fucking up, that I could feel comfortable or even confident. Like I felt like such like a weird, awkward, shy person that once I started playing music and playing shows, I started realizing that the people that were on stage that I was playing with that looked so confident, they were also awkward and weird and shy and maybe able to put it on for 45 minutes while on stage. And then afterwards, just retreat, to the green room and become themselves again. It must be so interesting, like looking back, because I don't know why Bound's been on my mind, but that's a film that I feel like it has so much of the themes that are so intrinsic to your work, and it's so like they're just such good feminine characters, like in such like a way that's like I saw it later, so like it all just kind of all gels in my head. But I imagine with that being, you've got a budget. You're making a big project. You're managing this whole crew. You're doing the whole thing. Were you anxious? Like, were you able to be present for that project in a way that you are now?
Oh my God, no, not at all. It was a complete blur.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember parts of it. I remember that there were moments of like playfulness, and there's some playfulness in the shots. Like there were parts of design within the production designer Eve Colley had designed these really cool sets and dressed a lot of the sets in a lot of ways that we were able to find shots on set. A lot of our shots were like very premeditated, but there's this one shot where there was this piece, this glass block that was sitting on the bar where Caesar is like getting ready to like dive into all of his crazy machinations in his head and conspiracies of how Johnny stole the money. And so somebody on set like lifted the glass block, and they were like these segments of like there were like 16 tiny windows within the glass block, and
right,
that refracted the image so that you would get 16 images of the thing. And we're like, oh, this is great. There's like 16 Caesars. We have to shoot this. And so we just like, arbitrarily dollied over and shot through this like prism thing. And, the designer, like the sound designer, like put like, multiplied the sound so that there were like 16 Caesars pulling the cork out of this bottle. And it was like, tung, 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 tung. And so, yeah.
I have a hard time centering myself in my body. I feel like my brain is constantly floating away. But sometimes when I'm in the middle of a project and my anxiety is pretty bad, I do kind of fall back on some of those formal skills. And, noticing a shot like that comes from, a filmmaking background and that training, I feel like. And sometimes it's just like, just let that take the wheel,
Yeah, for
Like,
sure.
speaking of sound design, I would be remiss not to ask you, when it's come to your work, and I mean this, everything from, directing, producing. So feel free to, talk about whatever instances you feel like. Music. What is your relationship with music and your work, just because that transforms the moving image so much?
Yeah, music is funny in films. I'm really curious about your point of view on it as well. So watched everything when I was a kid. We would go to the movies constantly. Mom and Dad would take us to the movies constantly. Some days we would have these special days that we would see like 3 movies in a day, and go see a matinee and then go eat a meal and then see another film and then go eat another meal and talk about everything we'd seen. And my mom and dad would call them movie orgies. And I was pretty young, and I was like, I don't know what this orgy is, but I love it. so
God bless.
but but a lot of like what we would do is just you'd watch on whatever was on TV. So you'd see these there was this local thing called Fraser Thomas Classics, and we would watch Robin Hood and the Three Musketeers and The Man in the Iron Mask and all of these like the Seahawks, the Vikings, all of these old-timey films or Westerns. We were always watching Westerns, Sergio Leone. And so I grew up with score
Yes.
in films. And it wasn't until later where, you get, especially I think the director that like really relied on licensed music for his score is, Martin Scorsese. And there's something funny to me about putting licensed music in a film that, and not that we do it, I do it myself all the time, but there's something funny because a piece of music that exists outside of your film has all of these relationships with the listeners who appreciated it before they've seen it in your movie. So they are bringing all of that baggage of that relationship to your film. And I think I don't think that people think about whether or not there is if that's a good thing or not.
Sometimes it can feel like a little bit of a cheat, don't you think? Like, I feel like, especially like using like a really well-known needle drop, if you bring in like a Rolling Stones song, let's say, or Beatles.
Yeah.
Its aura, if we're going to get like very art school about this, its aura is already sort of deteriorated in such a way. Whereas I feel like the other way it can happen too, where the film that it gets inserted into, sometimes you will forever associate a song. Okay, the easy one for me would be like, I friggin' love the song Spy Break. Guess, where I heard that, and like the Propeller Heads, that's where I kind of found that. Cause like I grew up, 90s, 2000s. So it was a lot of soundtracks that were, songs from musical artists, and that's how you would find them. You'd go pick up the soundtrack, and that's how you would go find bands. And it was also the era of, Danny Elfman was doing a lot of scores. So everything that I was growing up with had a lot of scores by him, whether it was like the Tim Burton work or things like that.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, I think you have such a good point that a lot of, the older movies, that those themes and the heroics of those kinds of themes. I have a James Dean poster above me, and that's a favorite of mine. The Rebel Without a Cause soundtrack the score is one of my absolute favorites, as well as old school Star Trek. I can think of some of those like themes to like Amok Time, where they go to Planet Vulcan, like that stays in my mind, and just the ways in which those themes are just like so sticky, and they're so stuck to the visuals in a way that it just makes my heart feel full. But there's definitely some really nice things going on these days too that are much more, abstract and, strange. But
Yeah. Yeah, like the composers, when I think about, like Sergio is like Morricone, I mean,
yes.
those soundtracks, I imagine putting just like licensed music on like a Sergio Leone movie, and I'm just like, you're missing this thing that is like was crafted for the film, and I think that is something that has like gone away a little bit.
Do you have an experience with score that comes to mind, or is like a favorite experience, or of that you've worked with, just in terms of, you're creating something and then suddenly music gets laid on top of it, and you're like, oh shit, we've done it.
For sure. I mean, so my relationship to music has like it's grown a little bit over my career, where in the very early days, like with Bound and Matrix, wow, and probably, yeah, I think all the way through Matrix. Maybe not Speed Racer, but definitely through Matrix. And even V for Vendetta, when we were working with James, that we would use temp score. We would take, score from other films and just like,
Oh, okay.
you put it on and it gives you like a sense of
Yeah.
what the tone is supposed to be. But there's something about that that's like putting on someone else's clothes.
Yes.
And the film wants to ape the essence of that score. And that's not a good thing. And so what we learned from Tom Tickfer, was that Tom writes all of his score before he makes his film.
Wait, so that the picture's cut to sound as opposed
The
to
picture, yes, is cut to original music. And then
Wow.
you go back and then you rescore it and you get an orchestra and you fill it out and you add stuff depending on where you need it. And it just like changed everything for us. And so now I try to do that. I don't use temp music anymore. I always like write stuff with a composer right away. Or, what I really liked I guess with Matrix, what was cool was that we had, for the sequels, we had the original piece, right? So we could take themes out of that and like expand on it. And so with that experience, we had a band, Juno Reactor, who did a lot of our pieces, and they would write music for Don Davis, the composer, to just have the orchestra play and separate it all out for the stems, and then they would go away, and then they came back and would create these amazing techno scores. So we went from that propeller heads experience to taking the idea of licensed music and like, okay, we're going to make our own licensed music, but we're going to do it at the very beginning so that you're basically scoring with the band itself, who is like scoring the picture, basically. And that was an incredible experience. And I'm surprised that folks don't do that more, where they're like, I like this band, I want them to come in and like make some original music, and whatever they want to do.
I mean, that's such a brilliant way to work, because film, since its inception, it used to be you'd put different color filters over the silent movies to signify outdoors, indoors, daytime, nighttime. And just the fact that you can have a score that's modular and can kind of, express ideas like, Matrix, Real World, those kinds of things, and really kind of make those shifts, because between the editing and the acting, it's all just so holistic. That's so lovely to hear about that process, because I feel like, especially when you're expressing such complex ideas like the Matrix, you have to use that tool. I mean, that's a huge tool. There's such emotion that's drawn through music, and the crests that are in that score really encapsulate those epiphanies that the characters are having.
Yeah. And like, to something that you said earlier about the aura of something, it's just like imagining licensed music.
Yeah.
And with the Propeller Heads song, there is like an aura around that piece of music. that I wish I could go back and like just take that out and find some other way to put something else in there, because I think it limits our imagination when we think about, oh, well, that piece of music was actually better used in this other film. You're bringing in that other film that it was attached to, and you're all sitting down there together watching this piece. I don't think that filmmakers think about those kinds of comparisons in the audience's brain.
No, that makes total sense, because as you're delivering the baby forward, and as you're getting towards the final process, it's like you want it to be as, I'm using the word immaculate, just meaning that I want it to be its own thing.
Yeah.
But you have to be careful about, as you're rolling the ball up the hill as like Sisyphus the whole time, that you're not picking up too much grass along the way. So that at the end of the day, it's still your boulder and it's your intention as you're driving it through. It's like taking little bits and pieces of things are fine. Like we were taking little bits and pieces. There's a lot of things in the record that I think maybe not on first blush, but on second or third, people are going to figure out that there are some cartoon elements in the sound design, whether that be a ricochet sound effect, whether that, just like certain things that feel like, I was just listening to a lot of music from like Merry Melodies or like a Cab Calloway, like that kind of like things that feel stretchy and bouncy and have that kind of like animation to it. I'm hoping that that's something where people can kind of get a whiff of Looney Tunes, but not fully go there, if that makes sense. Like there's no full on sampling or that sort of thing. But it's fun to carry it forward, because now I'm working with an animator. They just graduated from RISD, and I'm directing them on creating a short loop for one of the songs. So it's the first time directing animation.
Oh my God, that sounds so cool.
Yeah, it's just nice to let one's mind kind of free associate, kind of guided by those hard skills that we've picked.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, the record is fantastic. I was listening to it again this morning.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So good.
Thank you. Yeah, it's one of those things where I over this year, it's like at 2:00 in the morning, I would listen to it once every month and a half. And then it would go, okay, it's still fine. It's fine. There's nothing you can do about it. It's already off to the presses. So like, I'm more just like, comforting myself. But it's been exciting to kind of get it out there and to process all these things over the past 5 years about it. But as we kind of, get towards the end here, I'm really having to, it's one thing to learn how to draw. It's another thing to learn how to, talk to a DP about lenses. It's another thing entirely to just calm your own brain down as you're approaching the finish line. Where are you right now in the creative process? You don't have to be specific about what it is, but I'm just wondering, are you in, I always kind of picture it as in like I can either plant ideas or I can reap ideas. Right now, I'm pulling the harvest of this new record. I'm waiting to plant seeds for the next one. Where are you in the process in terms of, are you seeing something across the finish line?
Well, I've finished the script with my partner that we wrote. We finished it last year, right around this time. And we did this polish of it in January. And so since January, we've been sharing it with folks. It's just wall-to-wall trans people. It's a way to process all of our trans rage. And it was started in 2017, and we wrote for a little while and then had to put it down. I got this job show running on this TV show called Work in Progress.
Yes.
Yeah, and my mom and dad died, so that was heavy and took a lot of time up and a lot of gloom, getting through that gloom. And then we woke up, we picked our heads up, and it was like, 2021, and everything was way shittier for trans people. So we were like, well, let's get some of this out. And we finished the script, and now it's kind of we're in this moment in the timeline where I feel like I mean, what's happening in our country is happening across all these different industries. I feel like it's happening in, these in media and film and television. Like you have all of this consolidation of companies, all these like mergers are happening. These billionaires are buying up all these, different news outlets and magazines and newspapers and or putting them out of business. And the same is happening in film and TV.
Everything's becoming very flat.
Yeah, you end up with this ideological, vertically integrated system where they're not going to make certain kinds of films. And that trickles all the way down through the waterfall of the corporation. So there is this slowdown in the film and TV business that's happening where like nobody's really doing much work. Whatever work is happening, they are rolling back, DEI initiatives, the GLAD list of like, where are we on TV is like plummeting. It's like, we are nowhere on TV. We are nowhere on film. There's 2 trans characters or 2 films last year with trans people in them. And so the chances of some studio coming forward to go, oh, well, yeah, we'll take a chance on this is pretty nil at this point. So we're not deterred. We are we just the scope of what we're trying to achieve is just a little bit bigger. I mean, it's a lot bigger, but we can say it's a little bit bigger to be able to wrap our arms around it. And that is that we have to think about ways to reorganize this business of art, and how can we circumvent this structure that is being foisted on artists, not just foisted on artists, but that is excluding artists. And so I've started the process of like trying to figure out how can I raise the money for this project independently. So I'm like trying to connect myself to people who recognize what's going on, the march of fascism in this country. And, we all have to be asking ourselves, what are we going to do about this? We have to like figure out ways that we can all be applying ourselves to stop this from happening in this country.
That makes so much sense. I feel like even folks that are listening to this conversation are going to be nodding along if you're from any kind of marginalized community or have eyes. Things are changing rapidly in every sector at every scale. I can't imagine the challenge of trying to get this project made at the scale of what you're making it. But even like at our small scale, it's like, yeah, we were getting included in stuff in 2020, and I just had this sick feeling that I was like, this is temporary. This is going to go away. And as soon as everything, went back to normal, especially touring is like a weird one that I think people don't think of with indie bands, is that a lot of the larger bands that succeed through the system are going to be bands of a certain kind of a makeup, and bands like to go on the road with people that they know. So you can imagine how those like the systemic version of this kind of echoes out and excludes certain kinds of people from being included in certain spaces. And I'm just not talking about ourselves. I'm talking about other people, and people are having to get really creative about how they're getting things made these days. But I just think back to the media that was important to me when I was a young teenager, whether that be the music in my Walkman, the movies that I was watching, it's like that art needs to exist because for me, there's just media that has been absolutely transformative to my life. And I just hope that that's something that can continue to be made for kids these days, because honestly, they're going to need some really messed up art to reflect our messed up times, and that reflects the complexities that they're working in now and the new realities and the new dimensions, especially within LGBTQ issues, in terms of like the dimensionality of like identity. I feel like we've just tapped the surface, and I'm really hoping that something freaking changes.
Yeah. I mean, the kids don't dance anymore. That lyric hits me so hard when I was walking over, doing my morning walk this morning. And I was like, wow, this is fucking heavy. They don't dance because of all the shit that's going on. It's like such good writing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow, this has been amazing. I selfishly, before we go, can you please recommend me a movie?
There's this great video store that was in Santa Monica called Vidiots.
Okay.
It was beloved by LA. It went out of business and then like the phoenix from the ashes, reemerged as this 501c3, this not-for-profit in Eagle Rock. They have a theater and they are a video and DVD archival library. And so Bound showed there, and somebody came up to me and asked me that question. And the movie that's been on my mind lately the most when I think about this time is The Battle of Algiers. Yeah.
That's a great pick. It's not quite a comfort pick, or maybe it is.
I mean,
it's very
in a way, yeah. Tell me one. Give me one.
Okay, I'll give you two. Okay, so this first one, well, I mean, there is a movie. It's devastating. For some reason, on a comfort level, I have been rewatching all of Evangelion.
Oh my God.
There's just something about it that I feel like in the chaos of it, it just kind of reflects the chaos outside. And I know how it's going to end, which I think that's the comfort part. Like knowing how the apocalypse is going to happen. That's the comfort. The other one is Jacques Tati's Playtime. It's just like one of the most like beautiful, like just like the cleverness of it just warms my heart formally. So I think that would be my two.
Those are good ones.
Thanks.
Sorry.
I hope that we get to continue this conversation. I feel like I understand your work more after this conversation today. So thanks for chatting.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure. We should go have dinner or something soon.
Let's do it.
Love it.
Love it.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Alicia Gaines and Lilly Wachowski for chatting. If you liked what you heard, please follow Talkhouse on your favorite podcasting platform and check out all the great stuff in our podcast network. This episode was produced by Myron Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.